There's a category of work task that most professionals dread more than almost anything else. Not because it's hard, not because it requires expertise they don't have, but because it's slow. It requires sitting with a large amount of information, a report, a set of data, a stack of emails or documents, and distilling it into something clear, useful, and appropriate for whoever needs to read it. Reports, briefings, summaries, analyses, the tasks that used to block out 2 hours in your calendar and still didn't feel quite finished when the time was up. This episode is about what changed. Specifically, how I use Claude AI to turn tasks like that from a 2-hour block into a 15-minute job, and why the output is better than what I was producing in 2 hours. Products in the description before we start. The brief, 1 page, is free. Your first week with Claude AI at work is $20, both below. Before we get into the system, let's be honest about where the 2 hours actually went. Most professionals, when they sit down to write a report or briefing, spend the first 30 to 40 minutes just getting oriented, reading the source material, trying to figure out what matters and what doesn't, deciding what the report actually needs to say before they've written a word. Then another 30 minutes writing a structure, drafting an outline, moving sections around, deciding what goes first. Then an hour of actual writing, which often means rewriting because the structure wasn't quite right, or the tone drifted, or the section that seemed important when you outlined it turns out to be less important than you thought once you're actually writing it. And at the end of 2 hours, you have something that's fine. Not great, fine, because you were too deep in the material by the end to read it the way the recipient will read it. Claude AI doesn't just speed up the writing step, it compresses every one of those steps, orientation, structure, draft, into a single 15-minute process, and it produces something better because it reads the material fresh every time. Here's the shift in how I think about report and briefing tasks now. Before, I sat down with the source material and tried to write my way to clarity. The report was the thinking and the output at the same time, which meant I had to do both at once, and both suffered. Now, I brief Claude AI on the situation before I touch the source material. I tell it who the output is for, what they need to know, what they'll do with it, and what format works for them. Then I give it the source material. It produces a structured output already calibrated to the recipient. I read it, make 1 or 2 directions, and I'm done. The thinking I used to do during writing now happens in the brief. And because the brief forces me to articulate the objective clearly before anything is written, both the brief and the output are cleaner than the reports I used to write in 2 hours. Part 1. The brief that does the distillation work. What to include, and why each element changes what Claude AI produces. A strong report brief covers 5 things. Here's the template. I need to produce a type of output, report, briefing, summary, analysis, for audience, who they are, what they know, what they'll use this for, how much time they have. The source material is describe what you're giving Claude AI, a document, a data set, a set of emails, meeting notes, a research report. The key questions this output needs to answer. The 2 or 3 things the reader most needs to know. Anything to flag or highlight? Risks, tensions, decisions required, things they might ask about. Format, structure, sections with headings, executive summary plus detail, bullet summary, table. Tone, formal, plain language, direct and brief. Length, 1 page, 500 words, as short as possible. Then paste in the source material. That brief, combined with the source material, gives Claude AI everything it needs to produce something genuinely useful, rather than a generic summary that covers everything proportionally regardless of importance. Of those 5 elements, 1 makes the most difference, and it's the one most people leave out: the key questions. When you give Claude AI a document and say, summarize this, it summarizes it. It covers the content proportionally. Longer sections get more coverage, shorter sections get less. The summary reflects the document's structure, not your reader's needs. When you give Claude AI a document and say, summarize this so my CEO can understand the 3 biggest risks and the 1 decision she needs to make before Friday, it produces something completely different. It filters the entire document through the lens of those 2 needs. Everything else falls away. The key questions turn a summary into a briefing. They tell Claude AI what to look for, what to surface, and what to leave out. They're the difference between a document that covers the material and a document that serves the reader. Before you write any report or briefing brief, ask yourself, if I had 30 seconds with this person, what would I tell them? Those are your key questions. Part 2. 4 real document types. 4 situations where this system changed the outcome. Document type 1. The board briefing. The situation. A 40-page industry report landed in my inbox at 9 in the morning. Board meeting at 2. I needed a 1-page briefing that would let the CEO and non-executive directors engage substantively with the topic without reading the full report. The brief. I need a 1-page board briefing on this 40-page industry report on supply chain disruption. The audience is our CEO and 3 non-executive directors. They're experienced executives, not specialists in this area. They need the 3 most significant findings, the 2 biggest risks relevant to our sector, and 1 question they're likely to be asked by an investor or analyst about this topic that they should be prepared to answer. Plain language, short sentences, executive summary format, no jargon, no padding. What I got back, a 1-page briefing that covered exactly those 3 things, in exactly the format I needed, in language that worked for that audience. I read it, made 1 small direction, tightened the risk section, and had it in the CEO's inbox by 9:30. Old process, 2 hours. New process, 12 minutes. Document type 2, turning raw data into a readable summary. The situation. Monthly performance data across 6 business units. Numbers in a spreadsheet. No narrative. Senior leadership team needs a written update that makes sense of the numbers. What's good, what's concerning, what needs attention. The brief. I have monthly performance data for 6 business units. I need a written summary for the senior leadership team. They know the business well, but they'll read this in 5 minutes before a Monday meeting. I need an overall picture in 2 sentences, then 1 short paragraph per business unit, covering what the numbers show and what the key point is. Flag anything that's significantly ahead of or behind target. Tone, direct and factual. No management speak. Then I pasted the data. What came back? A structured summary that read like it was written by someone who understood the business, because the brief gave Claude AI the context to interpret the numbers rather than just describe them. One direction, add a 1-sentence headline at the top that captures the overall picture. Done. Old process, 90 minutes of staring at a spreadsheet, writing and rewriting. New process, 8 minutes. Document type 3, briefing someone on a long email thread. The situation. A colleague needed to step into a conversation mid-thread. 42 emails over 3 weeks. A disputed scope change, some tension between 2 stakeholders, a decision that was made but not clearly communicated. She had 15 minutes before a call. The brief. I need to brief my colleague on this 42 email thread before a call in 15 minutes. She needs to know what the dispute is about, where each party currently stands, what decision was made and when, and the 1 thing she should be careful about on the call. There's a tension in this thread that could resurface. Clear and direct, 3 to 4 paragraphs maximum. Then I pasted the email thread. What came back? A clear, structured briefing that accurately captured the dispute, the positions, the decision, and the tension, including naming exactly what the tension was and why it might resurface. My colleague read it in 4 minutes and walked into the call prepared. The thing that surprised me most about this use case, Claude AI is excellent at reading between the lines of a long thread. It noticed the tension and named it correctly from the tone of the emails, even though it was never explicitly stated. Document type 4, digesting a large volume of research or reading. The situation, preparing for a strategic planning session. 6 long articles and 2 reports on a topic I needed to engage with substantively. I didn't have time to read all of it, but I needed to be able to contribute meaningfully in the room. The brief. I have 8 documents, 6 articles, and 2 reports on the future of remote work in professional services. I'm preparing for a strategic planning session where I need to contribute meaningfully on this topic. I need a synthesis, not a summary. What are the 2 or 3 most significant themes across all of these? Where do the sources agree and where do they disagree? What's the most counterintuitive or surprising finding across the set? What's the one question a good facilitator would ask in a session on this topic that I should be prepared to answer? Then I pasted all 8 documents. What came back? A synthesis that identified 3 strong themes across the set, noted 2 genuine disagreements between sources, surfaced 1 counterintuitive finding I hadn't noticed in my skim reading, and gave me a genuinely good question to be prepared for. I walked into that session more prepared than I would have been if I'd spent 3 hours reading. Here's what surprises people most when they see this system in action. The outputs are better than what they were producing manually. Not because Claude AI is smarter than you, because of the brief. When you sit down to write a report or briefing manually, you read the source material, you form a view of what matters, and you write. But your view of what matters is shaped by having read the whole document. And by the time you're writing, you've lost the ability to read it the way someone who hasn't read it will read it. When you brief Claude AI, you're forced to articulate what the output needs to do before it's written. Who is it for? What do they need? What questions does it need to answer? That articulation, the brief itself, is better thinking than the unfocused reading you'd otherwise do. And because Claude AI reads the source material fresh, with your objectives already clear, it produces something that serves the reader, rather than reflects the writer's immersion in the material. The brief doesn't just make you faster, it makes you think more clearly, and clearer thinking produces better outputs. Part 3. Building this into a system. Here's how to make this a habit, rather than something you remember to try occasionally. First, brief before you read. When a report or long document lands in your inbox, your instinct is to open it and start reading. Resist that instinct. Write the brief first. Ask yourself, who needs something produced from this? What do they need? And what format works for them? Then give Claude AI the document and the brief together. You'll often find that the brief itself, the 10 seconds it takes to ask, what does this output need to do, surfaces a clarity that reading the document for 20 minutes wouldn't have. Second, use co-work for recurring report types. If you produce the same kind of report regularly, monthly performance updates, weekly stakeholder briefings, quarterly reviews, set up a co-work project for it. Your standing context holds the audience description, the format conventions, the tone, the things to always include and never do. Your brief for each instance just covers what's new in this particular report. The context does the rest. Third, save your best briefs. When a brief produces an output that's exactly right, save it. That's your template for the next time you need the same type of output. Over time, you build a brief library for every recurring report type, and each instance takes 30 seconds to brief rather than 5 minutes. A quick diagnostic for when the output isn't quite right. It covered everything, but nothing stands out. Your key questions weren't specific enough. Instead of, what are the main findings, try, what are the 3 findings that most directly affect our commercial position? The tone is wrong. You didn't specify the audience clearly enough. Add more about who's reading it and what they care about. The CFO is not enough. The CFO, she reads in 30 seconds, needs the number first, and will push back on anything that sounds like management speak, is. It's too long. Your length constraint was missing or vague. Always specify. 1 page is specific. Concise is not. It missed a key piece of information. Either it wasn't in the source material, or the source material was too long and Claude AI deprioritized it. If it's critical, paste that section in separately and ask Claude AI to integrate it specifically. Here's your challenge for this episode. Find the next report, briefing, or summary task on your list, something you'd normally block an hour or 2 for. Before you open the source material, write a brief. Use the template from this episode. Ask yourself, who is this for? What do they need to know? What questions does it need to answer? What format works for them? Write that down. Then give Claude AI the source material and the brief together. Track how long it takes. Compare it to how long the same task would normally take, and compare the output to what you'd normally produce in that time. That comparison is the argument for building this permanently. Quick reference: the system in one screen. The template, type of output, audience, source material, key questions, anything to flag, format, tone, length. Then paste the source material. The element that matters most, the key questions. They turn a summary into a briefing. They tell Claude AI what to look for and what to surface. The habit, brief before you read. Co-work for recurring report types. Save your best briefs. The diagnostic, output covers everything but nothing stands out. Key questions weren't specific enough. Tone is wrong. Audience description needs more detail. Too long. Add a specific length constraint. 2 things in the description. The brief, 1 page, free. The document summary template alongside 4 other task types. Print it, keep it accessible. Your first week with Claude AI at work, $20. Day 3 covers document summaries and report briefings in full with 5 worked examples. Day 4 builds the co-work system that makes recurring reports take 30 seconds to brief. Both links in the description. Via Claude for Lawyers on Gumroad. Same creator. That's episode 11. Brief before you read. Key questions first. 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. Better output than before. Serious skills. Actual output. Every time. See you in the next one.